Good evening and welcome to the July meeting of the Beavercreek Board of Zoning Appeals. Ms. Gillow, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clunin?
Here.
Mr. Butler is absent. Mr. Essman?
Here.
Mr. Rust?
Here.
Mr. Archibald?
Here. I will entertain a motion to excuse Mr. Butler.
Motion to excuse.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Okay, by voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, Mr. Butler has been excused. Okay, we have a relatively short agenda tonight. Any additions, subtractions, modifications to the agenda? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as written.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is hereby approved. We also have minutes from a meeting we had just last month. Imagine that.
2 in a row.
Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the minutes. And are there any corrections, additions, deletions, changes, modifications to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as written.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Again, by voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes as written, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are hereby approved. Okay, moving right along. We have one public hearing tonight, and that is V 23-6, Jonathan Faulkner, 194 Bramblebush Trail. Ms. Gillow.
This is case number V 23-6 on an application filed by Jonathan Faulkner, 194 Bramblebush Trail, Beavercreek, Ohio 45440. Requesting a variance from Chapter 158.104A of the City of Beavercreek Zoning Code to construct an accessory structure within the required 10-foot side yard setback. The property is located on the east side of Bramblebush Drive, 5 lots north of the intersection of Bramblebush Drive and West Wind Drive, further described as Book 3, page 22, parcel 162 on the Greene County Property Tax Atlas.
Okay, thank you very much. Matt? Tell us what you got.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have tonight case number V23-6 for a detached garage to be located in the required side yard at 194 Bramblebush Trail. So basically, here's a location of the house property in relation to the neighborhoods on the south end of town. And then, here's your drive-by. Sorry for this little sun glare there.
It's moving with you.
It is. So that's the applicant's property and basically where they're wanting to locate the detached garage is in this location here. Here's a site plan that basically shows the layout. The red boxes on the north and top and bottom of the property is the 10-foot side yard setback. The orange on the right-hand side is the rear yard setback. And then there's a blue box that kind of goes around the outline, and that's a 5-foot utility easement basically on the east and southern side of the property. There's a 5-foot utility easement. And you guys were provided a copy of the record plan that shows that utility easement. And basically what I did was just kind of cut out a couple pieces of that. I don't know if you've got if you're interested in that. Thanks. But basically that's on the record plan, the plat record showing where the utility easement there is on the parcel. So Basically, the applicant is requesting that the garage encroach into that side yard setback there at the bottom. He's requesting an 8-foot encroachment. A couple of the issues is the utility easement, which is the biggest of the problems, I guess, as far as locating it in that utility easement. But aside from that, the applicant actually has quite a bit of rear yard that a detached garage can be located compliant. And in February, the applicant actually had applied for and received a permit to locate the detached garage in the required and within the rear yard. And I think the applicant actually included a copy of that permit in his information that he submitted, and it should be in your packet. But basically, what the garage basically was kind of approved in this location here, just a little bit farther to the north. So the applicant's concerns are the tree that you can see just to the behind the house there. Let me get this pointer to wake up again. The tree is located right here. And then the applicant also states that there's a service line that goes, underground service line that goes from a utility pole in the back to the house. From our perspective, service lines are often relocated as a part of construction projects. That's not necessarily unique to this situation, and trees are often also relocated or trimmed or removed in relation to construction projects. So while I do understand, the applicant's desire to kind of leave those in place when it comes to looking at our variance criteria, those things really aren't really aren't to the level that would require a variance, even with the options of the other space in the rear yard to locate the detached garage. So when we're looking at basically our criteria, basically staff felt like the first criteria was not met, that there was a circumstance or practical difficulty that prohibited the applicant from strict conformance to the code. Again, the relocation of a power electric service or a tree really is not unique to properties, and oftentimes those things are dealt with during construction projects. Staff felt like the second criteria was not met because the applicant's requesting basically an 80% variance, and there are alternatives. There's plenty of places in the rear yard to locate a compliant structure. The third criteria staff did not feel basically was met because when looking at the Hawthorne Glen subdivision, there were we found five other detached garages in the neighborhood, and all of those were, of the couple hundred houses that are in that neighborhood, it looks like there were 5, and all those were compliant. There weren't any variances or anything, and so it wouldn't be in harmony with the general spirit and intent of the code, especially given the fact that there are compliant locations for the detached garage. Especially with the utility easement, with a 2-foot variance, and then with the overhang of the house, not the house, the detached garage. I mean, the detached garage would pretty much be on the property boundary with an overhang. So again, staff does not believe that would be in harmony with the general spirit and intent and purpose of the code. The next criteria, would it not, is staff felt like it wouldn't necessarily be injurious to the surrounding properties, although if you allow I guess it could be argued if you allowed the detached garage to be in the utility easement, potentially there could be potential harm if there was a need to access the utilities. There would be potential harm in that regard as far as, but The next criteria, granting the variance would result in the deleterious change in character of the community. Staff again felt like that criteria was not met, due to the fact that there weren't other detached garages, or, I didn't really find where there were any variances for encroachments in those setbacks. So that would be, there's not very many detached garages in that neighborhood anyway. And so then to allow one, practically on the property boundary would be a negative change to the neighborhood. Number 6, granting the variance would not infringe upon the rights and quiet enjoyment of the adjacent property owners or endanger public safety. Staff does not feel like, it would be a public nuisance or necessarily endanger public safety. Again, I guess you could take into account if it is in the utility, is there some harm potentially from it being utility easement? That's to be determined, I guess, but staff did feel like that criteria was met. The seventh criteria is it for a compelling reason. Staff does not feel that the applicant's request was for a compelling reason, given the fact that there are alternatives to relocating the detached garage in an acceptable location in the rear yard. And then lastly, staff did not feel like the criteria was met because really, the cutting down the tree, avoiding or relocating an electric service, we felt like, really is somewhat to the economic benefit of the applicant, and that therefore that criteria is not met. So while I do understand, the reason for the applicant making the request and their positioning on the driveway and different things like that, staff recommends denial of the variance request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Funk. Okay, do we have a representative for the applicant here?
I'm the applicant.
Go on up, please read the card on the upper left-hand side of the podium and tell us why you're here.
Sure. I, Jonathan E. Faulkner, affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Beavercreek is the whole truth to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, welcome, Mr.
Did you
Faulkner.
need me to raise my right hand or anything?
You can if you want. You're free to if you want.
I just raised my right hand and I'll affirm all that I just said, so.
Got it.
Very well. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Jonathan Faulkner. I'm the one of the homeowners of 194 Bramblebush. The other homeowner, the more important one, is to my right here, my wife, Kinsey Faulkner. And the head golf pro at our house is my son, Jack. He's sitting here as well. So I appreciate you having us. So in response, we have submitted this request. Mr. Funk has already correctly stated that Greene County and the City of Beavercreek have approved our build of a detached garage. This is a 2-car detached garage. It is true that there are not many detached garages in the entire Hawthorne Glen development. Where we live is a bit of an older section. There's more houses that have, say, 2-car garages. A street to our east is a newer section, and you have houses with 3-car garages that have more room. They're larger houses. I would tell those neighbors they're the nicer houses. To the south of us, the development continues to move along. Houses are newer, more garage space there. So in the older section where we live, that is immediately south of Indian Ripple Road, I can tell you that within 5 houses of ours are 2 different houses that have detached garages. The house immediately to our north, the Martins, does not have a detached garage. The house immediately to that, north to that, our neighbor, he has a detached garage. It's larger than what we're intending to build, and it sits next to his above-ground swimming pool. It is also quite close to the property line, the northern property line in that case. So he's 2 yards away, detached garage, very similar to what we're intending to build. If you go 4 houses the other direction, at the end of Bramblebush Trail where it runs into West Wind, there is a tri-level house, again, approximately the same age as ours. It has a 2-car detached garage built immediately in line with the driveway, exactly as we are intending to build ours. And it is 4 houses away from our house. It's larger than what we're intending to build. We are trying to build a slightly taller garage because we're primarily going to use it for an indoor golf simulator. That's what the hope for use is. But in this detached garage, which would have power and air conditioning and so forth, we're trying to build it in the requested variance area within the setback for the three reasons of, one, it is in line with our actual garage. Yes, we have a backyard, as Mr. Funk pointed out, and we could build it anywhere in that backyard. The problem is to connect a garage to our driveway would result in paving over a substantial amount of green space. Furthermore, the underground utilities, our entire neighborhood is underground, there isn't any above ground. The underground utility in our neighborhood runs completely along the eastern property boundary of our lot. It's all underground. That would be behind this garage, and our connection point to that is a zigzagging S shape that we would have to move if we build this garage within the setback requirements. Now, I understand it's commonplace to move a underground utility service. However, with a granted variance of any amount less than the 10-foot setback, we wouldn't have to move the underground utility service. So in speaking with our builder, he's estimated somewhere in the $5,000 to $6,000 range for moving the underground utility service. While I understand it's possible, I do think, according to item 1, it does create a practical difficulty to this build to have the underground storage or the underground utility service moved when a variance request would allow it to remain in the same spot. Also, as stated in the filed application, if we build this garage, this structure in compliance with the setback requirement, we've got a large, mature, healthy tree. Again, I understand it could be trimmed. In fact, it will be trimmed, but it will be cut down. The root ball will have to be removed. And while that's possible, I don't think our neighborhood and the appearance of it is benefited from that. As you'll see in our submitted request, we spoke with all of our neighbors about this. And in fact, we submitted a signed statement by all of our neighbors, well, at least the ones closest to our house, certainly within 500 feet, where they all agreed that this is a project that they stand behind. We constantly get compliments on our house and the way we keep it, but in building this structure, they were sad to see the possibility of this maple tree getting cut down, and it will get cut down to build this garage. So I understand it is possible to cut it, but the standard in item 1 creates a practical difficulty, and the removal of the tree is a practical difficulty, and the moving of the underground utilities is a practical difficulty. Further, the third reason, again, we're building a garage, and it is in line with our driveway, which is on the southern end of our lot. That driveway was in existence when we bought the house 13 years ago. So the location of the driveway, because it's the route of passage for your car, I think it needs to coincide with the location of the garage. So yes, we could build it anywhere in our backyard, but that's going to be paving over green space. To pave over green space and extend it into our backyard creates, quote, a practical difficulty, which is exactly under standard 1. So for those three reasons, I think it's an appropriate variance. The underground utilities, the tree cut down, and in line with our existing driveway. Next, under 2, the variance to be granted is the minimum variance possible. Again, we're trying to align it with the driveway. It was an existing driveway, so the setback of 10 feet would be perfectly fine if our driveway coincided with that setback. It doesn't. So we're trying to build the garage structure in line with the driveway, and it is on our lot. It doesn't impede upon the neighbor, encroach upon the neighbor. That neighbor who lives on the side most affected, she signed the paperwork saying she agrees with this. So I do think it's minimally invasive, and other solutions like building it elsewhere in the backyard are, quote, impractical. It's possible, but I do think it's impractical. The granting of the variance is in harmony with the general spirit, intent, and purpose of the zoning code. I think the zoning code is designed to enforce buildings that are safe, that are of a quality that is appropriate to this community. Well, this construction is all of those things. been approved by Greene County as far as a safety perspective. The setback issue, the reality is, if you pull up an overhead map, there's still going to be more than 10 feet of green space in the yard between that structure and the next neighbor. So there's going to be green space, there's going to be passage through. So that's item 3. The granting of the variance will not be injurious to surrounding properties. Not to be redundant, but Mr. Funk agreed with that, so let's not cover that. The granting of the variance number 5 will not result in a deleterious change in the character of the community. These are expensive builds. It's going to add to the property value. There's going to be a tax increase. This board probably hears that a lot, but it's true. And again, it's going to look exactly like our house. In fact, this build, the way our house is laid out, we have a 2-story area, a 1-story area, and then our garage all attached. It is identical to the same size as the existing garage. And if in our neighborhood you went 4 houses down to West Wind, turned left, and went 3 houses down, there's a house identical to our own. And it has a detached garage that is identical to the architecture of the house. So, when it comes to the appearance of the neighborhood and the change in the variance we're requesting, we're really looking to build a garage that is identical to the other house that's identical to ours, that's literally 5, 6, 8 houses away from us on West Wind. I'm sorry I don't have the exact address, but that makes the usefulness of our house more attractive, and I think it's appropriate under item 5. Mr. Funk agrees item 6, or the staff agrees item 6, so we won't cover that. The granting of a variance is for a compelling reason, and not simply because of plans that conflict with the zoning code. As I said in my application, or our application, the word compelling is hard to use here. We're talking about a detached structure. It's a garage. It's not that important in life, okay? But we're trying to build a structure that adds to the property value and makes the house more useful. And I do think that building it in a way that promotes green space, mature plants, and routes to the actual driveway makes sense. It's practical. It's a practical solution. And lastly, this is not solely for economic benefit. I mean, believe me, writing checks for this project has been 0 economic benefit so far. We're building this. That costs. What I'm trying to avoid is the unnecessary cost, the hardship of moving the underground utility, cutting down a perfectly healthy tree, and adding all that to the already swelling cost of this project. So I think it promotes the appearance of the community. It certainly promotes the increase in value of our property. Our neighbors are looking forward to this project getting underway. And as I said, I think it absolutely adds to the neighborhood. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. I'm sure we will have questions for you.
Okay.
But right now I'm going to open it up for the public hearing. Does anyone from the public care to get up and speak? I don't see any, unless you'd like to speak at all. Yeah. Yeah, Mrs. Faulkner.
No, I agree with everything.
Okay. All right, great. All right, so the public hearing is closed, and I will open it up for discussion among my Board of Zoning Appeals
Mr. Archibald,
cohorts. Oh,
if
I'm
I
sorry.
could put into the record the written input that we had received.
Yeah.
I did want to make note that we did receive a list of 12 property owners residing on Bramblebush Drive and Southway Drive that were all in support of the variance, and each BZA member did receive a copy of that.
Right, okay. Thanks, Ms. Gilhall, for keeping me on my toes.
Probably for the record too, we ought to at least, Mr. Funk included in his presentation the
Steve,
flat.
Mike.
I touched the button.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
There you
there. Yeah, but I don't think, the copy wasn't actually included in the packet, so I
package, right.
just thought you probably ought to reference that also, just to have it. Thank you.
go. Okay. Any other written input? Okay. again, thanks for keeping me on my toes. Okay, now we can start the BZA member discussion. So let me start with Mr. Clunin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple questions. Probably start with Matt, if you don't mind. And perhaps our city attorney could help with this question too, if need be. As it pertains to the easement, is it acceptable for a garage to be put over top of it? Does the easement holder need to have notice of that before, or have any input in where it might be?
Yeah, I mean, it was intended for nothing to be built in that easement area. It's for the access of the utilities. According to the applicant, it sounds like the utilities are to the rear property lines, and that's their access to those then utilities. If there's obstructions in those easements, then they, whether it's taking, trucks or, whatever equipment, trenchers or whatever, that's their access to those utilities in the back. So to allow, the encroachment into that utility easement obstructs their access, their legal access to their utilities in the back, assuming there's none down the side. I don't know if you want to have anything to add, Steve.
I'll try this, Mike. No, I would agree. I mean, per the terms of it, because you don't know when a utility company could put something, we don't know what the future is, but effectively, they have the right to, remove anything. I mean, if you plan to, people put landscaping and utility easements, I've seen it a number of times, and then they're shocked that the utility company comes through and rips it all out, which they have a right to do that if they so choose, and they do have access. And the problem is if you narrow the access and they want to run a backhoe, as an example, down there, the only way, and that happens to be their way of going, because they have a right to go down there, they effectively are going to go in someone's yard that isn't covered. So, I mean, at the time this was platted, and, we could debate whether that was the right way to do it, but it was platted, what I see a date on the back in
I think it was in the
76.
70s, yeah.
I think it's 76. So, this whole subdivision has these utility easements, and there's one provision here too that says they're effectively valid unless a court order determines one of them's invalid. But I don't think you're going to find a court that's going to determine the utility easement is invalid in that particular situation, because there's probably every one of us live in a structure that there's probably utility easements running somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we, as a side note, I mean, with all the underground going in for fiber optics right now.
Right.
I mean, that's been a hot topic, are these utility easements. And, residents calling, hey, these people are in my yard and all that kind of stuff. And they're utilizing those utility easements to gain access to people's, yards, rear yards in particular in this situation.
Yep, MetroNet is tearing up my neighborhood.
Yeah, and there's more to come, I think.
I'm not sure if it's out of turn, but if I may, MetroNet was just at our neighborhood last fall, and it,
Would you come on up to the mic?
Yes.
MetroNet was in our neighborhood just last fall and put in the fiber optic install, and it is exactly in the same spot as the eastern boundary. The back of our lot is the eastern side, so we face west. So the eastern side, it has all of that stuff buried underneath there, and I think they accessed it through our neighbor, came up the side yard on the other side of the house. And so it's already in there, and I perfectly understand what an easement is. I think the easement is 5 feet off of the property line, whereas the setback is 10 feet off the property line. So, I mean, we're asking to build at less than 10 feet. If it was out of the easement, we're still getting a variance that's 5 feet off of the property line, and that still saves the tree and may not completely resolve the underground utility, but it's within the 10-foot variance. So to the extent that a utility easement, there isn't any utilities there. There's a underground dog collar thing there. But it's there. I get that. I do think, though, that that same area can be built on immediately outside the easement without any interruption to the easement itself.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, if that was it.
That's actually a good follow-up to our segue, Mr. Faulkner. May just stand back up if you don't mind. When I look at the map in the staff report here and talking about where the easement is it 2 feet or 3 feet into the easement? Is that what the proposal is?
Right, it's,
Or something like that?
it's 3 feet in the request. As I said, well, okay, there you go. So.
Is this map correct? Because there's a map, another map that shows that garage is more in line with the driveway.
The map, that is my house, okay? Where that yellow box is for the proposed garage, to be accurate, needs to go up the screen. So it is absolutely, we're asking to build it within that red hash marked area. Yes, but I think it's going to be above that blue line. So it's 3 feet. The building is going to be 3 feet off the property line at least. We asked for 2 because it's not exactly in a straight line as you go from the street to the left side of the screen to the back of the property. The driveway does not parallel the property line. You'll see that the driveway actually moves toward the property line as you go back. You see that?
Oh, okay.
So we requested 2 feet just because it was an inexact amount of distance from the property line as you move back. But that yellow garage on that picture is too far to the property line. It needs to move up is where we're asking for it to be.
Okay, so I suppose then the question would be if you moved it so it was outside of the easement entirely, obviously there's still going to be in the setback, but does that save the tree? Does that cause any other hardship?
Well, I think it absolutely saves the tree. I think it would have to, I don't know the answer about how close it gets to the zigzagging underground electric service, but it certainly impedes a lot less than the 10-foot setback requirement. Because on that picture there, you can kind of see, I'm embarrassed, it's my trash can. I'm going to use it as the trash can as a reference point. It's like that neon green little circle there. You see it? That's a trash can. But it's covered by a bush, so it's not sitting out for the neighbors to see. So just above that trash can, towards the top, that's where our electric meter is on our house. And if you went straight back, so to the right side of the screen, and then zigzag towards that other structure in the back, which is a shed, it takes kind of a curve. Oh, I'll point it, yeah. That might help. Sorry, that's easier to point than it is to make words. This is it?
You gotta shake it the way you know.
Okay, how's this thing work? Oh, okay, so right here is where the electric utility box is. The electric service, which we had marked, comes back like this, and then it takes, oops, that was too much. It takes an arc this way, and then it snakes to this side of our shed and connects to a service underground over here. Okay, so it's kind of like a half of an S, like this. You with me? So if you build the garage the full 10 feet off of the property line, that whole thing has to be moved. If it's less than that, it will be off of this run here. There may be a small arc that needs to be dealt with here, okay? But it's going to be less than the full 10-foot setback.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. That's all I have. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification, as far as the image and so the yellow box in that drawing is actually to scale. So what may not be 100% is the image from the county. Sometimes those are off just slightly. But as far as the distance from the property lines, the setback lines, all that is to scale. So all of that is correct. So that is the distance of the yellow box is the dimensions of their garage. It is 2 feet off the property line. So, the utility easements, all that stuff is scaled correctly. What may be, skewed just slightly would be the image.
So Just for clarification purposes, so the variance is requesting encroachment of 8 feet into the 10-foot side yard setback,
Correct.
which makes that picture correct.
Yes.
What I think I heard Mr. Faulkner say was that it's really not going to go 8 feet in. The request for the variance really is more like 5 feet as opposed to 8 feet.
Sorry, excuse me.
No, you're fine.
And forgive me if I indicated that I thought he drew an inaccurate picture. My understanding is the barn or the garage is going to be the corner of the driveway up, okay? So it would not hang over the driveway like that looks like to me. But so the building will be at least 3 feet off the property line, okay? According to the builder, the foundation is cement and it gets poured in line with the driveway. That's on our property, and that will not require any variance. But then the building itself sits 2 feet off of the foundation that's poured. I think as a practical matter, it could be as close as 3 feet to the property line, is what we're requesting. But in any event, we're trying to get it closer than the 10-foot setback, because that is so far away from the property line that it will affect the tree and the underground utility service.
Okay. So, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
It's not my turn. I've already encroached on somebody else's turn. So, Mr. Rust.
Yeah, I just want to hear a little bit more about the other locations that are possible and why you think those aren't tenable. Is it anywhere in the backyard that's available, or?
Sure. So anything that's not, anything inside this red line or the orange line here. So, the applicant, could feasibly put the garage back and actually, kind of allow their driveway to come around to the detached garage that sits right here. They're farther away from the tree, so his concerns about saving the tree would be alleviated. There would still be the issue of the electric service, but it sounds like no matter how far north he moves the garage, the electric service may be impacted anyway. So moving it here, I mean, obviously sounds like it might be used as a garage, but it's going to be used as a golf simulator too. So, anywhere over here could be, he could potentially bring in another driveway on this side, located anywhere over here. Basically anywhere inside this orange and red line would be an acceptable location as far as the garage. And that's one of the criteria is there an alternative, and is it the minimum variance possible? And that's where staff believes, those two criteria aren't being met because he has alternatives, and the minimum variance would be no variance because there are alternatives. But just to shift the garage back to here, and move in, would be a reasonable, would not be an unreasonable location for that detached garage. As far as we were talking about the proximity of the driveway to the property line, it could be that image may just needed to be shifted down just slightly. Like I said, those are county overlaid images onto their GIS system. So sometimes there are slight variations to those images. So it could be that image could have been needed to be slid down just a little bit or something. But yeah, there certainly are viable alternatives, and one of which would be just to move the garage back and over, a little bit. So the other concern is, with the utilities, with that, with a 3-foot encroachment into the utility easement, and then when you factor in the overhang of the detached garage, I mean, you essentially eliminate that, that utility easement on his side, and you're forcing, the utilities to access, the other 5 feet, or potentially, encroach onto the neighbor's property to gain access to their utilities in the back, assuming that in the future they don't run utilities down that side property line. So, which is again another reason to not be in that that area at all, so.
Thank you. So, in regard to access to the neighbor's property, so the neighbor's property, there's a shadow that's cast on my driveway right there from the neighbor's property. It's a fully bricked chimney, and there's no windows or doors on that side of the neighbor's property. And there is, again, even with the build that we're proposing in the variance, with the variance granted, there's more than 10 feet from that other house to where our building would be. So there's at least 10 feet wide for access point, okay, in that same area. Now, in regard to other areas where it could be built in our backyard, we're going to use it for a golf simulator and some parking use. I am certain that hardly anyone else would use it for that same purpose. I mean, it's, to quote one of my best friends when it comes to golf, here's some advice: sell your clubs, right? That's what they say. What does that mean? Well, if we build it anywhere else in our backyard, you're going to have a standalone building with no connection to any other ingress and egress point to the street. So, yes, we could build it in the upper northeast corner and not be in any easement. The problem is the entire backyard will sit between that building and the driveway. Now, I might walk to it and hit golf balls, or he will, but the next owner who doesn't do any of those things is going to need that connected to the driveway somehow. That is going to be a substantial amount of paving, and as a practical matter, that anywhere north of that tree is an impractical remedy, because it's nowhere near the driveway, and this is an accessory structure with a garage door on the front. Stated another way, it could be a boathouse, but it's nowhere near a lake. That would be an unnecessary build. So the fact that we might use it for a non-car use, the next person's probably going to use it for a car use.
Anything else? No, that's all. Okay, Mr. Essman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome.
Just a couple questions I have.
Four.
I don't know, I'm just going to sort of blurt it out, and we'll see who jumps up to answer, okay? If we grant this variance, we're allowing encroachment upon an easement, a recorded easement. In my experience, if you want to get rid of an easement, then you go ahead and apply to nullify or get rid of the easement through the utility companies and/or through the courts. Is that correct, Counselor?
I would
Vacate
agree.
an
I
easement?
mean, in theory, you've got, well, how many people are in this plat? You got, I mean, potentially, yeah, potentially, yeah. I mean, the court might make a ruling, but I suspect you'd probably have to notify a number of the people around you, which they may agree, but because, removing one easement could result in a request to remove a lot of easements, which at some point, there is going to have to be easements. I don't know where the alternative is, but I'm not going to try to design it here. But I think, at some point, you're right. If you remove that one and everyone else starts removing it, I'm sure that's when the utility companies are going to definitely say something, because with these electrical lines in the back, they're going to have to get there somehow.
So I guess I have a real issue with allowing anyone to build over an easement. The easement was originally platted. Everybody knew it when they bought the house. It's there. It's recorded. It's an easement. It's there. So I have a real issue with that. And my other question is, in the lower right-hand corner, is that an additional utilities or a accessory structure? Yes. Okay. So that may limit how far back a garage could be set back if we went that way.
Yeah, and it certainly could be relocated as well. It's a shed in the backyard, so.
Okay. I guess my biggest concern at this point is the easement issue. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Can you throw up this picture? I think it's the one that came from probably it's probably part of your permit package, right? From, that you submitted to the county?
Hold that picture up.
It's this one. It shows the location of the proposed garage and the utility line, the electrical.
it was in my packet.
It's in the packet. I don't have that in my presentation.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Mr. Faulkner, referring back to this picture, is that a fairly accurate depiction of where that electrical utility line is today?
Yes, it is. It was
Okay.
marked just recently, I'd say 2 months ago. They came out, marked it all with the paint and everything like that, and that is as accurate as I could make it.
Okay, so, with the way that, I believe you drew the red box on this picture, right?
I did,
Submitted
that's
as
right.
part of the permit. If that is, in your opinion, fairly accurate, aren't you gonna have to move that utility line anyway? I mean, it's
close.
precariously close, right?
It is close. Mhm.
Yep. And,
Well, so to your question, I think, again, the farther we build this from, using that picture, the south boundary is where it says 160 over here next to the driveway.
sure,
So the farther we build this building from that line, the more stuff has to move.
right, right. And I think I agree mostly with Mr. Essman, is that, building on top of an easement is problematic. It's not illegal, right?
Right.
But it's, if a utility, any water, sewer, electrical, anybody wants to come in there that's a public utility, tear down that garage because you're in the easement.
It doesn't matter what I'm about to say, but I'm familiar with easements.
Okay.
For a lot of reasons. But as a practical solution, there is an easement identical to the one on the south side, on the north side of the property, and so access to anything on the east boundary of our property could occur on the north or the south side of our property.
It
It's an
may,
easement.
but that doesn't mean that the utility company has to accept your reasoning either.
That's right.
Yes,
They
sir, and
have full
I
access to the easement.
I understand that, but again, the easement is 5 feet off of the property line versus the
Sure.
10-foot setback that the building
Right.
code requires. So
Right.
if you built 5 feet 1 inch off of the property line, you're not in the easement, you're allowed to use your property, and it would still be within this required setback.
Sure.
So
That's not the variance that you applied for.
Right.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that.
Okay. And so before you go, for this picture, roughly how far is it from the tree, the base of the tree? Let's not talk about the canopy just right now.
Yep.
But the base of the tree to this side of that proposed garage.
To the proposed garage.
Yeah, this picture.
Yeah. This is an estimate by a layperson, okay?
Sure.
I'm going to say 15 feet-ish
Okay.
from that boundary to the base of the tree. The trunk that you can see, not the root ball, not the canopy.
Okay. Okay. So,
This one. Ms. Faulkner, is it 15 feet from the proposed edge of the garage drawing, or 15 feet from the red line, which is the 10-foot?
Oh, I'm sorry. From, Mr. McHugh, I meant from the garage drawing, not the red line anywhere.
Okay, so from the red line, it's
Probably,
another 15 feet on top.
Yeah,
of it.
that's-
30 feet,
All right.
25 feet?
I would say at least 30.
Okay, so from the red line, the closest I'm just trying to get directions for the record.
Sure.
So we have some idea here. From the closest red line to your house, right? the very edge of the 10-foot, to the
You're
tree
saying this
trunk.
red line right here?
Yes,
Okay, so from that red line there to
the trunk.
like the trunk, I'm gonna say it's at least 30 feet,
Okay,
probably closer to 35 feet, something like that.
okay, all right. Yeah, we just had a lot of directions going around here. It's
Sorry,
like
I
trying
don't,
to.
I live
No,
there,
no.
so I'm familiar with it. You guys don't, I understand, so.
Yeah, I just
So
wanted
does
to clar-
that help orientate?
No, that answers the question. I just want to make sure we all, I want to know which line we're counting from.
Sure. So stated another way, the proposed garage could be built outside of the utility easement and still stay off of the tree.
Okay.
I think that's what you're asking.
That's what I was getting for. Okay, all right. Thank you. I don't have anything further for you right now. I reserve the right to have seconds, but Mr. Funk, what was I going to ask you, Matt?
Just a point of clarification, the applicant does not have a utility easement on the north side of their property, just for clarification.
Oh,
That's your setback.
that's
Oh,
the,
forgive me, I thought that was the,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to speak for Mr. Funk's picture. I thought he said that that red line was the utilities, but the bottom line is I was stating that that red thing up there is on the north side. So forgive me if I indicated that was the utility easement. I thought that's what you said it was,
Yeah.
so my apologies.
Yeah, the red is the side yard setbacks, so.
Okay, just some policy clarifications. The yellow box, is that measured for the pad or for the outside of the structure?
That's the applicant's dimensions for the structure, 24 by 28.
Okay, and that's exterior dimensions?
Yes, I assume
Okay,
so.
okay. And,
To answer that question, yes.
thank you. Okay, and for encroachment purposes, is it the side of the, because I've heard now that the pad is smaller than the exterior sides of the building. So for the setback purposes,
I'm sorry, did you say the pad that it's built on is smaller than the building?
yes.
No, the pad is going to be larger than the building by 2 feet all the way around.
Oh, okay, okay. I misunderstood. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yep. So the yellow box then is the outline of the building, not the outline of the pad.
Yes,
The pad doesn't really come into play for the setback requirements, though, right?
right, it's the building.
Okay, all right.
But in essence of, I mean, when you're concerning, when we're looking at, the utility easement, I
Yeah.
would certainly want to take that into consideration,
Absolutely.
given that the fact that it's a utility easement. So-
Right, right. Very cool. Thank you. I think I don't have any more questions. We have a second.
Can I have seconds, please? For the applicant, when you and your builder applied for the building permit, was the building department made aware that you were building on an easement?
It wasn't.
We didn't get a permit to build within the variance. We got the permit first, and then after the utilities were marked to the house, that is when I applied for an easement on the basis that it would save the effort of having to relocate the underground utilities and the tree. So Greene County has approved the structure being built on our lot. After it was approved, I applied for a variance for building it in that exact spot.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
sir.
There's the applicant.
Again,
Shows
just
10
to
feet off the
make it
property.
easy for the record here,
Yep.
there's this drawing's in the packet, right?
Yep.
I don't know who drew it, but that looks like.
That would be me.
Okay, that was the one that was applied for,
Yes.
right, and shows the 10-foot and all that.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, just, because that might answer your question, Mr. Osman.
Thank you.
About
It does.
a couple pages from the back of the packet.
Yeah, so to be clear, we weren't expecting Greene County to somehow invalidate what is the right of this board to determine where things should be built if it's involving the Beavercreek zoning code. We were just getting approval to build a structure on our lot.
Sure.
So,
Sure. Mr. Clune, seconds? Mr. Rust?
Nope.
Okay, So just in full disclosure, I own a golf business.
Oh. I appreciate your effort, sir.
Well, it's the truth, it's just. Anyway, okay, so, without any further discussion, I will entertain a motion to either approve or disapprove, V 23-6 for the Faulkners.
I'll make a motion to disapprove the application for a variance, really mostly based upon the fact that we'd be building over an easement, and that would be, to me, a deleterious effect on the neighborhood, because it could affect other lots. I guess that's a motion.
Okay. Before I ask for a second, anyone of my fellow compatriots feel that we could get more information, more specific information requiring concerning this, and maybe table this discussion, or are we ready to vote?
I would absolutely agree, Chair. I think that tabling this makes sense. I would agree with Mr. Espin that my issue is with the easement as well. Outside of that, I feel a little bit different, and I'm not sure what our ability is to change the variance application or do anything like that. I don't think we have the ability to do that.
Right.
Not have the ability to change the application.
No.
So I think that perhaps tabling it does make sense, just so I can see you guys in another month.
That being the case, I'll withdraw my motion and motion that we table this until we receive some further information about the validity of the easement.
I'd second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table this for further information and discussion. Ms. Gillall? Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Funk.
Ask that we clarify what we're tabling it for and what the board hopes to accomplish in the month that if we meet again.
It's good. That's a very good question. My thought on that is that I think that there has been discussion about possible alternatives that have not been presented here tonight, right? That outside moving the structure so that it doesn't encroach on the easement, but still might be in variance into the side yard setback, could be something for further consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to know if the county would permit the building over an easement. I mean, currently what's been presented to us is a plan that shows that they're building over an easement. That is not what was presented to the county
Right.
to get a building permit. So this may become very moot for us if the county says, you can't build there, you can't build over a permit, you can't build over an easement, in which case, he'd have to withdraw his application anyway. So, I'd like to know if the county building department allows folks to build over an easement. Does that help you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm not sure that they actually make that determination as far as.
I'd like to know what determination.
I'm not sure that they make that determination.
I have some prior history, and normally building departments that I used to supervise always checked upon easements before they allowed buildings, but that may not be the case in Greene County. That's why I'd like some clarification.
Question for the board too, to help Mr. Funk also, would it be helpful, because using these aerial photographs do have some limitations, would it be helpful to have at least a little survey of where the driveway is in relationship to the utility easement? And with the survey, then you'd also be able to accurately depict where this garage is actually going to go, including the overhang, so you know if it's in relationship to this utility easement. But, I mean, that would really fall to
Right.
the applicant to provide that to this board, but I think the applicant, that, it seems that you're looking for some additional information and.
Right. Also, part of the additional information I would like to find out is if, as planned, the electrical needs to be relocated, because I believe it does. I believe it would need to be, but that's a totally fact-free statement. Okay. Any other discussion?
So just for clarification, you'd like staff to check with the county to determine whether or not the building department would allow a structure to be built over an easement, and you're asking the applicant to have a survey done to make sure that the distance that they're asking is, the appropriate location of the structure in relation to easements and property boundaries and all that, electric service and all that kind of stuff. Is that correct?
Yes. Anything to add to Mr. Funk's summary? No, I think it's well said, Matt. Thanks.
I appreciate the clarification, too, so thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to table this until we get further information. Ms. Gillo, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clunin,
Aye.
Mr. Esmond,
Aye.
Mr. Rust,
Aye.
Mr. Archibald.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so this is tabled. Just a note, want to make sure that you are aware that just because we're tabling this for gathering further information doesn't mean we're inclined to either approve or disapprove this one way or the other. But I think more information will help us make a more informed decision.
Understood, thank you, sir.
Okay? All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
A second?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor by voice vote?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none? We are adjourned.